Hey, I'm Jim Mullen, and I'm in the Biomedical and Health Research Services Group at Indiana University. And I'm the lead developer for Indiana University's open source RedCap related software, which includes RedCap ETL, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So RedCap ETL is a software tool for extracting data from RedCap. And it was developed at Indiana University, but it's used at multiple institutions around the world. I don't have complete statistics, but I can confidently say that it's used at least 80 institutions, and my guess would be that it's over 100. So this shows what RedCap ETL does at a high level. And the ETL in RedCap ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. And those are the three phases of what it does. So in the extract phase, it extracts data from RedCap. In the transform phase, the extracted data is transformed based on user-defined transformation rules. And in the load phase, the transformed data is loaded into a database. So next, I'm going to provide a little more detail on each of those three phases. So I wanted to mention that in the extract phase, you can extract data from multiple RedCap projects. I only show 2 here, but it could be 3 or 4 or an arbitrary number. And the other thing is that the extract phase also supports filter logic, which is a condition you can specify that will filter records. So I have an example in the blue box, and in this case, RedCap ETL would only extract records where the patient is 65 years or older and where they registered on the first day of 2022 or later. So only those records would actually be extracted. So the second phase is the transform or transformation phase, and it deals with mapping the RedCap variables to columns and tables in the database. And you can create as many tables in the database as you want and move the variables to whichever table you want. You can also exclude variables in RedCap. You don't have to have them end up in the database, as in birth date in this example is excluded. And you can also rename the variables. So by default, the column in the database will match the RedCap variable name, but you can also change it to a different name. And so the transformation phase is based on user-defined transformation rules, and an example of those is shown in the black box. And if you have a complex RedCap project and you were to completely manually create all those rules, it could be a fair amount of effort. So we came up with a way to automatically generate project-specific transformation rules, and it has several parameters, so you can somewhat change what gets generated. And I think the rules that are generated are pretty good, and you may be able to use them just as is, but if not, then you could use them as a starting point and modify them, which should still save quite a bit of time. And what's shown in the light blue box is the interface that's provided in RedCap ETL for the auto generation of rules. So in the load phase, where you're loading the data into a database, RedCap ETL supports 3 main database systems, which are MySQL, PostgreSQL, and SQL Server. And in addition, there's limited support for CSV or comma-separated value files and for the SQLite database. So the other thing I wanted to mention about the load phase is RedCap ETL also has what we refer to as post-processing SQL. SQL is structured query language, and it's language that's used to query or modify a database. So you can specify these SQL statements that are run on the database after the REDCap data are loaded into it, and they can do a variety of things, including, I mean, you could rename columns, delete columns. You could add calculated columns that are calculated based on the value of other columns. And you could delete rows, add views of the data, or add indexes, perhaps for performance reasons. So that finishes talking about the phases. The next thing I wanted to talk about is RedCap ETL is actually available in two different forms or implementations. It's available as an application and as an external module. So the application is a standalone program that runs outside of RedCap, and you execute it on the command line. It doesn't have a graphical user interface. And the external module runs within RedCap. So RedCap developed, many software systems have frameworks so that users can extend the functionality. And RedCap came up with the external module framework for implementing extensions. So with the RedCap ETL external module, it's actually running in RedCap, and I have a screenshot here of what the interface for RedCap ETL looks like within RedCap. So the external module, to summarize, is easier to set up and use. In fact, if you're using, I use RedCap, there's no software to set up because we've already installed the external module. So you just have to set up your project, and it has, a graphical user interface, whereas the application, you would have to have your own computer or server to run it. And you're going to just be doing things on the command line. There's no graphical user interface. But the application is more powerful and flexible. And one example I would give of that is, so both can extract data from multiple RedCap projects. But if you were in a case, say you were doing a multi-site study where you needed to extract data from multiple RedCap projects that were at different RedCap sites, you would have to use the application, because the external module doesn't do that. It only can extract data from multiple projects at the RedCap site where it's installed. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is the uses of RedCap ETL. And one of them is to combine data from multiple RedCap projects. And this actually was mentioned in the perks presentation that was just before lunch. Since you can extract data from multiple projects and then load that into the same database, it can be used to combine data from multiple RedCap projects, which is functionality that RedCap does not provide itself. In addition, you can use it to combine RedCap data with non-RedCap data. So if you have other data that's already in a database that you can access, then you're in good shape, because you can potentially just use RedCap ETL to load your RedCap data into the same database. So you have this integrated data that then you can analyze. But if it's not, it's probably much more likely, if it's in some other system, that you would be able to export that data to a database than export it to RedCap directly. So the other use is for data querying and visualization. So there are many more tools, kind of data analysis tools, that work on a database than work on RedCap directly. Querying or visualization or reporting tools. So if you can get the data into a database, you have a much larger set of tools that you can use. And also, what we have found is just the transformations that that RedCap ETL provides can really put the data into a state where it's easier to analyze. If you go for a complex project, anything with repeating events or forms, and just do like the export your project as a CSV file in RedCap, you're going to get like this sparse matrix that really is difficult to work with. So the transformations too can help to get it into a state where the data are easier to analyze. And similarly, it can help with writing custom applications. So first, developers generally know how to access a database and how to use a database. They don't generally know how to access RedCap or use it. So there would be a learning curve if you try to write something accessing RedCap ETL directly. Furthermore, again, the way the data you can kind of get in RedCap ETL, if it's at all a complex project, is not easy to work with. So then if you access RedCap directly, you're probably going to have to do code transformations or do them some other way that RedCap ETL would provide for you. Finally, if you get the stuff in the database in general, all general purpose programming languages allow you, they have functions where you can embed the SQL, the structured query language, to access the database. And SQL is very powerful in retrieving data. So it gives you, this powerful way of accessing data that is not available if you access it directly from RedCap. So this just summarizes everything that I presented. So I talked about the functionality of RedCap ETL, what it does, and it has the three phases: extract, transform, and load. In the extract phase, the critical things are that you can extract data from multiple projects and you can filter the records extracted. In the transform phase, it's user-defined rules that map the RedCap variables to database tables and columns, and you can auto-generate these rules, which you can hopefully use as if, but if not, use as a starting point. In the load phase, multiple database systems are supported, and it also has post-processing SQL statements you can specify that'll run every time RedCap ETL runs, and they can do multiple transformations to the data in the database. As far as implementations or forms, I talked about, again, available as an application or external module. We would expect that most people would use the external module just because it's so much easier to use. I mean, if you use the application, you're going to have a server, a computer to run it on. You're going to be responsible for securing the data, making sure that server is secure. So it's a lot more work. And then the uses, again, are combining data from multiple RedCap projects, combining RedCap data with non-RedCap data. It helps with data querying and visualization and custom application development. And if you want more information, at least on the IU instance of RedCap ETL, you can find information in Indiana University's knowledge base. GitHub is the software repository. You could go to GitHub and search for RedCap ETL. The RedCap ETL URL is the application, and RedCap ETL module is the external module. And if you wanted, you could go and look at actually all the code there. It is open source, but there is quite a bit of documentation on the GitHub site. There are these docs directories where there's quite a bit of documentation on using RedCap ETL. Finally, you can contact us at redcap@iu.edu for more information. And at the bottom, we have the acknowledgments. Numerous people have actually worked on the RedCap ETL project, and probably not even all of them are listed there, but the early users and the people in Advanced Biomedical Information Technology Core, which was the previous name for my group that worked on it, are listed there. So yeah, so I'm done and ready for questions. Yes.
I apologize, I came in a minute or two late.
Yeah.
So if you already covered this, I'm sorry. Can anybody get access to this? You have to ask for it. I can't find ETL on my little gray menu going down. You have to like get set up first.
Yes. So the question was basically, can anyone access this? And you can. I actually can't. If you check, I use knowledge base, I think it gives instructions. The way with external modules, like if you go to RedCap, you can set it up as being discoverable by everyone. And I think we don't have it that way, so it won't show up. But I actually don't remember. But there's a process. And basically, though, anyone can access it. And the good news is we used to charge for it, and now it's completely free. So no.
Very good.
No charge, and anyone should be able to access it. But yeah, I would check out the knowledge base. I think that